Here's a striking thing to consider. The United States federal government has zero comprehensive AI laws on the books right now. None. Meanwhile, the EU's AI Act is already enforcing rules, China has mandatory algorithm registration, and American AI companies are operating in a legal vacuum that is simultaneously terrifying and, depending on who you ask, the entire point. That vacuum is about to get very political, very fast, and the Republican Party is at the center of a genuinely fascinating internal argument about what AI regulation should even look like. If you care about AI, about startups, about your job, or about who actually controls these systems, this debate affects you directly. This video is for anyone who's heard vague headlines about Congress and AI but wants to know what specific proposals are on the table, what the real disagreements are, and what outcomes could actually change how you use tools like ChatGPT, Gemini, or Claude tomorrow. By the end of 7 minutes, you'll understand the 3 core fault lines inside the Republican position on AI, the specific legislation that's been proposed, and what each side would actually mean in practice. Let's start with what most people get wrong about this debate. The popular assumption is that Republicans are uniformly anti-regulation on AI, that it's a simple free market versus government control story. That's not accurate. What's actually happening is a 3-way split inside the party itself, and each faction has a coherent, internally consistent argument. Understanding those arguments matters because whichever faction wins shapes the entire American AI landscape. Faction 1 is the innovation first camp. These are legislators like Senator Ted Cruz, who chairs the Senate Commerce Committee's AI subcommittee, and representatives who backed the AI Act of 2024, a bill that explicitly prohibited state governments from passing their own AI laws for 10 years. The logic here is straightforward. If you let 50 states write 50 different rule sets, a startup building an AI product has to comply with 50 different legal frameworks simultaneously. That's not regulation, that's a tax on small companies that only big incumbents like Google and Microsoft can afford to absorb. The proposal mirrors what happened with Internet law in the 1990s, when the federal government preempted state rules to let the web grow fast. Cruz's bill passed the Senate Commerce Committee but stalled in the full Senate in 2024. The core mechanism was a moratorium, literally a pause button on state AI legislation. Colorado had already passed a consequential AI law targeting high-risk automated decision systems. The Innovation First faction sees that Colorado law as exactly the kind of fragmentation they're trying to prevent. Faction 2 is the National Security Hawks. This group, which includes members on the House Armed Services Committee, is actually fine with significant regulation, but only when it applies to foreign-made AI. They've supported export controls on AI chips, specifically the Commerce Department's restrictions on NVIDIA A100 and H100 chips going to China, and they want mandatory disclosure when AI systems in critical infrastructure were trained on Chinese or Russian data. This isn't a libertarian position at all. It's interventionist. They want the government deeply involved, just pointed outward, not inward. Senator Tom Cotton introduced legislation requiring federal contractors to disclose foreign AI dependencies. The practical effect would mean a hospital using a diagnostic AI tool would have to certify that tool's training data wasn't sourced from a sanctioned country. That's a real compliance burden, and it's coming from the hawkish right, not the progressive left. Faction 3 is the states' rights traditionalists, and this is where the internal Republican tension gets genuinely sharp. A meaningful group of conservative legislators, particularly those aligned with think tanks like the Heritage Foundation, argue that preempting state AI laws is actually unconstitutional federal overreach. Their position is that Colorado, Texas, and Tennessee should be able to run their own experiments. Tennessee, for example, passed the Elvis Act in 2024, a law protecting musicians from AI voice cloning without consent. That law is narrow, targeted, and genuinely protective of an industry. Should the federal government have blocked it? The states' rights faction says absolutely not. This is the real collision inside the GOP. The Innovation First faction wants to freeze state action. The states' rights faction thinks that freeze is itself a government power grab. They're both calling themselves conservatives. They just have incompatible definitions of what conservatism means when applied to a technology that didn't exist 5 years ago. So here's what you can actually do with this information right now. First, if you're building anything with AI, check your state's current AI legislation at the National Conference of State Legislatures tracker at ncsl.org. They maintain a live database. Second, if you're affected by automated hiring or lending decisions, Colorado's SB 205 is the most detailed state-level protection currently in force. Read it, even if you're not in Colorado, because other states are copying it. Third, watch what happens with the federal preemption question in 2025. If a moratorium passes, your state protections may vanish. Fourth, the chip export controls are already law. If you're building infrastructure with foreign cloud providers, NVIDIA export restrictions affect what hardware they can legally run. Here's my question for you in the comments. Do you think a single federal AI law is better than letting states experiment, even if that means messy AI rules? Drop your answer below. I'm genuinely curious where people land on this one. If this helped clarify something you'd seen in headlines but couldn't quite place, subscribe. We go this deep on every AI and tech policy topic on this channel. Next video, exactly how the EU AI Act's risk tiers work, and which tier your favorite apps actually fall into.